British Virgin Islands, and Anguilla. The teams that advanced to the second round of the CONCACAF qualifier for the FIFA World Cup, for the first time in their history. Today, I'll be talking about those small nations in the Caribbean that qualified on penalties against the US Virgin Islands and the Turks and Caicos Islands. Anguilla has an estimated population of 15,000, and British Virgin Islands is 30,000. Anguilla's first international match was just against the British Virgin Islands in 1985, with a 1-0 victory for the visitors. And the same thing goes for the British Virgin Islands. Same year, same opponent, and same result, and it was in a tournament called the Leeward Islands Tournament. In the World Cup qualifying, Anguilla entered the 2002 World Cup qualifiers, while the British Virgin Islands would enter World Cup qualifying 4 years later. Both Anguilla and the British Virgin Islands never advanced to the second round of the World Cup qualifying before, as they were getting defeated with lots of goals scored by their opponents. And now we reached the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifying in the CONCACAF. The first round matches were, in one side, Anguilla facing the Turks and Caicos Islands, and in the other side, British Virgin Islands facing the US Virgin Islands. Now let's go into the matches. In the Anguilla Turks and Caicos Islands game, March 22nd, the first leg was at Anguilla, and both teams ended the game in a goalless tie. And the second leg, 4 days later, was played in the Turks and Caicos Islands. This time, both teams scored. In the 23rd minute, Billy Forbes opened the score against Anguilla, making the Turks and Caicos Islands with the win at that moment. And still in the first half, Anguilla got themselves a penalty. In the 45th minute, with 3 of added time, Luke Paris scored for the Dolphins, making the match on level terms. The halftime score was this. In the second half, no one scored, and it went to extra time, and the extra time ended 1-1, and the winner would be decided on penalties. In the penalty shootout, the Turks and Caicos Islands were the first to take, and Mackinson Cadet scored. For Anguilla, the goalkeeper Jelani Lawrence missed. Christopher Lewis missed the second. For the home team, Luke Paris scored, having the shootout in level terms. Junior Paul and Jordan Dean scored for their teams. Kristen Howell missed, while Kane Connorwood scored his for Anguilla. Billy Forbes, for the Turks and Caicos Islands, scored. Now, if Lamar Carpenter scored that penalty, Anguilla would advance. But he missed. The score in that shootout was 3-3. And we would, for real, go to the final shots. For the Turks and Caicos Islands, Emmanuel Martin missed. And this time, if Kian Duncan scores this penalty, Anguilla wins. And he scores the winner for Anguilla. Now, let's go to the match between the British Virgin Islands and the US Virgin Islands. In the first leg, Jet Blaszka scored for the US Virgin Islands in the 73rd minute. And for the British Virgin Islands, they weren't scoring. That match would make them start with a loss. Until the 92nd minute, Hugo Lazario scored an equalizer for the British Virgin Islands. Now, the second leg would be at the British Virgin Islands. And this time, no one scored, and it went for a penalty shootout. With 1 scored each, and a 1 score and 1 miss at the second penalty, and also a miss for both at the third. A goal by Tyler Forbes at the 4th for the BVI, and a goal scored by Joshua Ramos for the US Virgin Islands would get into the last penalty of the game. Ozarni Colwood, for the British Virgin Islands. If he scores, the British Virgin Islands wins over their US rivals. And he does. Now in the second round, the British Virgin Islands are in Group B, with Jamaica, Guatemala, Dominican Republic and Dominica. While Anguilla is in Group F, with El Salvador, Suriname, Puerto Rico and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And the CONCACAF qualifier second round will start in June. Anguilla in the 2002 World Cup qualifying in the first round were drawn against Bahamas. And they lost 3-1 in the first leg, playing at home. In the second leg, in Nassau, Anguilla lost away from home, 2-1, eventually eliminated with an aggregate of 5-2 for Bahamas. And there were lots of eliminations in the first round throughout the qualifying, such as losing to Dominican Republic in the 2006 World Cup qualifying, in the second leg losing 6-0, in the 2010 World Cup qualifying against El Salvador, losing 16-0 aggregate, with a 12-0 victory of El Salvador in the first leg, and a 4-0 victory for El Salvador, and many more. And the British Virgin Islands, in the 2006 World Cup qualifying rounds, were drawn against St. Lucia, losing 10-0 on aggregate. Now in the 2010 World Cup qualifying rounds, the BVI were paired with Bahamas, and with an aggregate of 3-3, they lost on away goals. For the 2014 World Cup qualifying, they faced the US Virgin Islands and however, losing the first leg 2-0, and the second leg 2-1, once again failing to advance to the second round. And in the World Cup qualifiers of 2018 and 2022, both Anguilla and the BVI failed to advance to the second round. So what will be the 2026 World Cup qualifying second round expectations for the British Virgin Islands and Anguilla? Comment down below, and I'll see you next time.